right. Well, I'm 1 minute past what I said. So what's up, everybody else? I'm your host, Q, and we are back again with another ng-conf webinar. And this time we are happy to bring back our friends Jason and George from Infragistics. They were here with us last year talking about it. You see, I have the shirt on. Became a pretty big fan of quick coding, some low code. I'm actually talking about it in one of an upcoming Angular Plus episodes on the podcast. Jason's the senior VP of Dev Tools. He spearheads the customer-driven innovative features and functionality throughout all of Infragistics testing, developer, and UX products. And George heads the design strategy for solutions. He focuses on crafting Infragistics' amazing lineup of dev tools. If you have any questions for the guests, ask them in the chat. I believe that George is going to be monitoring the chat. If he misses something, I will ask, to repeat it. And like before and always, this is an ng-conf event and follows the same code of conduct as ng-conf. There's a link provided for you in the chat. I'll post it again so that you can read it. And in short, it just says, be kind and respectful. And with that, I will turn it over to Jason.
Thank you, Q. I really appreciate it. And thank you, everyone, for joining us today. That was a great introduction to George and I. And yes, today we're going to be talking about low code. Last year, we focused a lot on Figma and low code. This year, we're not going to focus on Figma, but I'm going to talk a little bit about it. You're going to see some of the newer features that we added since we last talked last year. We've been very busy with ensuring that we can deliver developers an amazing low-code experience and give you Angular code out the other end. And we're going to look at that today. So my name is Jason Barris. My email, jasonb@infragistics.com. George Abraham is gabraham@infragistics.com. I do a lot of different things with the products. George actually builds the product. So he is a core driver of the feature set, the user experience, and 100% of what you end up seeing in the design aspect of the interactions in App Builder. And what's cool about App Builder is that you are able to use a WYSIWYG, but also apply like theming and branding. It's very easy to use. So even if you're a designer and you are coming from Figma or Sketch, it's very easy to say, hey, this makes sense. If you're used to Visual Studio, hey, this just makes sense, or JetBrains or whatever, simple property editors, easy to configure and build out experiences. And hopefully that will come through very clear today in the demo. Infragistics, we've been around since 1989, so a very long time. We are a gold partner, Google partner, Apple partner, and we have a lot of developer customers, a lot of design customers. We have BI tools, we have digital workplace tools, but we are known for having the fastest data grids and data charts on the planet. So one of the things I'll highlight today is that aspect of our product. So today we're going to show you how to use App Builder, how to access it, log in, etc. We're going to do a bunch of demos and then show you what this looks like in Angular code as well. So let's go ahead and get started. I will highlight appbuilder.dev is a URL to get to our website. So I'll show you how to get there just from our homepage, but if you just go to appbuilder.dev, you can jump right into what you're going to see today. So the goal of App Builder, if you're not familiar, is to help you design and build apps blazing fast. It is a cloud-based, low-code, WYSIWYG drag and drop tool. So you have a toolbox and you have a canvas and you're dragging and dropping components onto the canvas. You're setting properties, you're binding to data, you're doing navigation routing, you're doing dependent variables, maybe you're setting a theme, adding images, and then you can preview it and then ultimately generate code. So we've been generating Angular code now out of App Builder for probably 4 years, maybe a little bit longer. And then all along the way, we've added more code targets. We support web components. We support Blazor server and we support Blazor WASM. So let's say that you are building Angular today, but your team member is trying Blazor WASM. Great. Use App Builder, change the target to Blazor WASM. They can take that app, boom, it's in Blazor, and it works great. And the nice thing is we synchronize to GitHub. You could download the generated app, but you could also just sync to GitHub, do pull request to GitHub. It just works great in your development workflow. So it's pretty slick, and you'll see that today. Our goal, make it fun to build applications. So when you think about this design to code revolution, digital product teams need to be way more productive than they are today. Gartner did some research and said 60% of the app dev time is spent on the UI. Now, the folks on today's webinar are probably split in several ways. You've got designers, you've got developers that have maybe coming from a desktop development and aren't familiar with CSS and web layout. Then you've got hardcore CSS folks, right? So hardcore CSS folks, you probably are happy writing CSS by hand, but there could be occasions where, hey, if you had a tool to just throw together a screen and then you tweak stuff later, great. But for the rest of us, mere mortal, CSS, layout, responsive design, all that's very hard on the web. A tool like App Builder can help you dramatically accelerate your development. So we've interviewed, surveyed, done a lot of research on how our customers use App Builder, and it saves them about 80% of the UI design time, which is massive. So if you think about something that took 10 days before to build out some screens, now takes 2 days. And you could build out amazingly sophisticated experiences with App Builders. There's really no limit, especially with some of the features that we've added in the last 12 months, which will come through in some of these demos today. So based on where you're at in your skill level, your expertise coming into the Angular space, you're going to have a different opinion of the type of tooling that you need. But a low-code tool that really does accelerate screen design can help everyone in one way or another when you're building out your application. So if you automate your life with WYSIWYG, think about some of the things that App Builder can do. It's full CRUD. So it'll do create, read, update, delete on your database. It has master details. So I've got a combo box. I select something. I want to update a grid, a chart, update a screen, whatever. All of that's built into App Builder with point and click. You're not writing any code. Navigation and route parameters. I have OpenAI. That's not OpenAI. It is OpenAI's for ChatGPT. George, why am I not thinking of what the format is for
Open API?
Open API? That is awesome. Open API. So this is what happens on live TV. So Open API, we will connect into any web API that you have with the Open API spec. We'll also connect into JSON files, REST, etc. So like I have a bunch of web APIs that I've built out for different databases, and I just point that Open API spec to App Builder, and everything gets sucked in for me. So that's great. Full theming and branding, we ship with 3 different themes, dark and light themes, but we also allow you to customize those themes, and you'll see that in the app that I'm going to start with today. Templating was a new feature that we added in the last year, which allows you to customize the way a grid looks. So you have cell display templates, cell edit templates, and I'm going to show you how to build all that today. You can do images, assets, and of course, code generation. That's the beauty of this, is you're Angular developers, you want Angular code. So that is where we are going to spend some time today. So a key statistic, this is from Forrester. By 2025, over 40% of app dev will be done using low-code tools. So what's a low-code tool? So App Builder's obviously a low-code tool. Figma's a low-code tool. You might argue that some super advanced CLIs are low-code tools. But the idea is your outcome, so your time spent getting to an outcome is significantly reduced with low-code tools. So you can still do the same or better in 80% less time with something like App Builder to deliver prototypes, deliver version 1, completed apps. It doesn't really matter. You're not limited to what you're building with the low-code tool. It's just that it will accelerate your workflow. And then with something like App Builder, the beautiful thing is you don't have to choose between, oh, we're using this design tool or this development tool. Well, I mean, we work with Figma, we work with Sketch. That's pretty much what everyone in the world uses. We work with Visual Studio Code, GitHub, anything that connects into GitHub. You can use JetBrains Rider. We don't care. The App Builder sits in the middle, right? So App Builder is part of your workflow where you're doing this WYSIWYG, data binding, all this stuff, and then you're going off to maybe your finishing tool to do whatever, your domain specific code, maybe some sort of authorization, authentication, et cetera. Maybe you have other third-party tools that you're integrating in, but you don't have to choose. It doesn't, we're not opinionated in that respect. And the key thing is, and this is really where you depend on us to be part of your dev team, is that with tools like App Builder, you can eliminate 100% of those bugs that usually happen in that design handoff or just in your general WYSIWYG. So a lot of bugs are very hard to track down. You don't know where they come from. But if a tool is generating code for you, then the bug gets eliminated. So then you might go modify something, and yeah, you might introduce a bug later. But the idea is that all of that, hunting and pecking and troublesome annoyances that go into starting something from scratch pretty much go away when you're using low-code tools. So everything that is designed and built in App Builder is backed by a design system with real UI controls. So Ignite UI is our UI control set, and these are production-ready, enterprise-grade components like data grids, data charts, navigation, doc managers, you name it. We have over 100 components there that you use when you're using App Builder. So the outcome is that you can build these applications in hours or days, not weeks or months. So this screenshot here is an example of a financial trading app that I built with App Builder. Everything you see on the screen was built with WYSIWYG drag and drop. I linked into data. And then what I did is when I generated the code, I modified a couple things to update like the live stream of the data. And I don't know what else, but it was very minimal because the majority of what I could do, I could achieve with that low-code tool. So this application was something that I literally did do in probably 2 or 3 days. And it looks beautiful and it just works. So that's the beauty and the fun of using a tool like App Builder. So with that, we are going to get right to it. So I have an application. It's running already, and it looks beautiful. It's a stunning, highly stylized app. I've got some navigation on the left-hand side. There's my homepage dashboard. I've got a grid, I've got some charts, everything's bound to data. I have a list control, repeating some data here for my team. I have events. There's nothing on this page. It just says start building. This is part of a template. And then I have this data grid, which is also really slick. It's got a image template, and it's got some other stuff here like Excel style drop down and a few other features. So very cool. How did I build this? Well, I used App Builder. So in my first demo, what we're going to kick off in terms of the demos is I'm going to show you just some high-level stuff inside of App Builder. And then George is going to go into more detail on the master detail piece and some of the data pieces that we've added more recently. So to get to App Builder, what you're going to do is I'm going to jump over here to the Infragistics homepage. And you can see we've got, some taglines. I've got design and development, which is key for Infragistics. So we have dev tools and design tools. We have BI tools. So we have an embedded BI SDK called Reveal. And then we have a team productivity digital workplace solution called Slingshot. But I'm going to jump over to the App Builder homepage. And on the App Builder homepage, in the upper right, there's a sign in option or a try App Builder option. That's going to lead you right into App Builder, where I'm at right now. And this is the entry point. So this is the first thing that you're going to see when you start your trial of App Builder. So App Builder has a trial, and then at the end of the trial, you can choose that, hey, this is really valuable, I want it, and you can buy it. And it's a SaaS-based product, so everything's online. You don't need to install anything. All this stuff is running inside of Edge or Chrome. I'm using Edge right now, but you can use Chrome or Firefox. It doesn't really matter. But here I am at the entry point. And what we do is we give you a handful of samples here, which are very stylized, beautiful looking applications. So in my HR dashboard here, I picked the HR dashboard sample to actually start with. We're going to go into that in 1 second. If I click new application here, not only can you get to the sample apps, but we have a bunch of default templates. So these default templates will help you build out applications from scratch. And they have like default navigation. We went and we scoured every possible scenario for an application, and we started looking at, hey, how about we pick these 15 default templates, and this is what folks would use. So I'll pop open a default template, and you can see I've got a left navigation. I've got, we're building Angular apps, right? Single page application views, etc. So super easy to work with. If I click the run button here in the upper right, you can see that my application is running. I have my navigation. I can show and hide my view, but nothing's happening here. I don't really have anything to show. Let's go to view 2 here, and I'm going to go ahead and start a new view, new layout. So let's do something very typical like a master detail. So I am going to make this a little bit smaller. I'm going to hit the Control E button, which brings up a quick search for all of the components, or I could jump right over to the toolbox and I could find a component to drag over. So what I want here is a list control, and I'm just going to drag this list right over to this area. In this area here, I want to do, let's just do a data grid. So instead of doing drag and drop, I'll hit Control E, I'll do GR, I'll select grid, and now I have my grid on the screen. So what just happened? We created a responsive layout just by picking it from a dialog. We added a component and we added a grid. If I run this code, you can see that now my page is beautifully responsive. It'll resize as I need it to. Notice the scroll bars are behaving nicely as you would expect. But what's even nicer is if I click over to the code view, here is the Angular code that makes up this screen. So I've got a div with my list with some items and sub-items, and then I have my data grid. If I look over at my TypeScript, this is the TypeScript that makes up the data binding. Now, this also created a service. We don't show the service here, the data service, but all of this is legit production-ready Angular code that you can then go ahead and generate. So let's go back to edit mode and make this list a little bit more useful. So I want to change this to be data bound. So you can immediately see when I set this to data, this changed over here. It's like, oh, wait a minute, looks like you're going to add some data. So we have some built-in data sources, Northwind being one of them. So I'm going to go and grab the Northwind employees table, and I'm going to get rid of this count of 5. Now you can see all of my data here. I'm going to click into my layout, and I'm going to tell it that I want the column layout to automatically overflow. So now when I run this, I'm going to have a scroll bar, right? So that's cool. I'm going to click edit, and I'll go here, and why don't we set some data binding properties? So I want to set this guy here to maybe the last name. So Newis, Caroline, Betum, etc. The subtitle, Let's change this over to their title. So this is our cost accountant, VP accounting, etc. And then finally, I want to change this avatar from an icon to an image. And I'm going to also bind this to one of the fields here. We have an avatar URL. So just like that, I'm ready to rock and roll. I have a completely data bound list in Angular. And you can see here, it's interpolation, doing data binding to a live data source. And I haven't written a single line of code. Now the grid, let's show off a few features of the grid. So in this case, what I'm going to do is we have a features area down here on the right-hand side. So I want to add some stuff here. So let's add advanced filtering. Let's add the grid toolbar, exporting, row actions, row editing, row selection, grouping, hiding, moving, pinning. We'll just do everything here. All right, cool. So now when you see all of the properties here with my grid, you'll notice some of them have like a little link. So for the grid toolbar, I'm going to change this to customer list. So now that changed up here in my header. And maybe I want to uncheck enable exporting. So you can see that that goes away. But I'm going to leave that there because that's actually pretty slick. So now if I run this, what this actually did is you'll notice on the grid, it added the code for the toolbar. And as we scroll to the right, this is the header here for, or not the header, but the first line of code for the grid. You'll see that a bunch of properties were set, and then it's reflected here inside of the grid. So I'm going to get rid of code view, and now we can interact with this. So let's say, let's do a group by title, which you can see we've got a bunch of different titles here. Maybe title isn't the best thing to group by. Title of courtesy, oh, that looks better. Maybe I want to do some filtering or something. You'll notice here when I go into the overflow for a birth date column, note that it's showing me date filters, right? So it's looking at the data type for the column and ensuring that it's the right data. Now, if I go to a string-based column, it's a text filter. If I have a number, it's going to be a number filter, but really slick. So now I did a grouping, just some basic stuff. I'm not going to show everything, but you can see here, you can do column moving. Well, let's might as well, since we're here, let's look at a field like, like city. I'm going to click on this and I'm going to pin this to the left. So now I have city pinned over to the left and it's all good. Now let's click export, export to Excel. There's my exported data. I'll bring this up. And the nice thing about what we're doing here is note that my pinned column is exported as you would have expected, and my groups are exported as you would have expected. But then again, you might not have expected that because most grids are exporting CSV. They're not actually taking what your configuration is. So just totally cool how this works in App Builder. Now, what George is going to show is how to wire this list up to this grid. That's like step 2. But what I want to do is I want to go back here, and let's go back into edit mode. I am going to take one of our templates, right? Or our sample apps, I'm sorry. And I'm going to grab the HR dashboard. And I'm just going to very quickly show you the code generation process. But I'm going to modify this first. So the first thing that I want to do is on the left-hand menu here, you can see I've got dashboard, team, and events. I want to add one more item, and I'm just going to call this employees, like so. Now I can select the icon. We have a massive icon library here. So we're just going to type in, how about we type in people, and let's do something like that. Looks good, employee. So what I want to do now is add a new field or a new view for my employee view. So I'm going to go back up to my pages that are existing in the application. So I have a master page and 3 child views. I'm going to add a new child view. And let's call this guy employees, like so. On the employees, I'm just going to do Control E. Let's do a grid. Actually, let's do something cool. Why don't we do this, this, done. I'll do Control E. I'll do a grid. And then here on the bottom, I'll do a Control E and I'll do a chart. So now I've got a grid and a chart. Now on this grid, what I want to do is it is bound as part of this default sample to the employees table, which is perfect. That's exactly what I want. But I want to change this column to an image. So I'm going to select my column and go over to cell display. Now I'm in my cell display template. You can see it says drop content here. So let's do Control E. Let's drop an image in there. Great. What's going to be in this image? Well, let's go to the right here, connect it to the data context that's bound to this grid, and let's grab our avatar. And boom, just like that, I've got my grid with all of these guys, and it looks great. So let's go back to edit mode. How do I wire this up to my navigation? I'm on my master page here. When you click employees, I want you to go to the employees view. So I scroll down. On my on click, there's some options: show, hide, open, close, run, set variable, more actions coming soon. All I want to do is navigate. So I'm going to navigate over to the employees view. So now if I run this from the master page, you can see I've got employees, events, team, dashboard, employees. It's all there, ready to rock and roll. So what's the next step? Well, I need to get this into Visual Studio Code. And in fact, I've already done all of that, but I'm going to show you the process. And, npm install can take like a couple minutes. Well, I'm not going to make you watch that. I already have it running in VS Code, but we'll get to that in a second. A first step, publish this to GitHub. So I am going to say this is going to be my HR webinar ng-conf. And let's make it a public repo. And I'm going to create this repository. So I've already logged in. You're going to be prompted to log in, blah, blah, blah. But here we go. HR ng-conf webinar ready to go. Let's upload this to my repository. It's doing its magic up in the cloud, creating this whole project ready to go. And it says, hey, the initial version is published. Let's jump over to GitHub and check this bad boy out. So you can see here that it created the entire GitHub repo. If I jump into source, I jump into app, you can see all of my views here. So let's take a look at that employees view that we just added. So here's the HTML, straightforward, no hidden secrets, no spaghetti code, no garbage. Let's look at the TypeScript. It's doing some binding of my employees type right in the ng on init. And it's getting the employees data. It's also getting the box office revenue data because remember, I had this chart and the chart was bound to the box office revenue data. Where's all that coming from? Jump over to services. My Northwind service is where I'm getting my Northwind data, which is my employees table. And then I've got this box office data coming from this service and the financial service.service. So the next step that you would do is you would take this, you would go copy the Git repo link, you would go to Visual Studio Code, you do your Command-Shift-P, you do a Git clone, you would paste this in, select your repo location, open this up, and boom, you are now linked up to that repository. I already did that, so let's jump over to this guy, which I did it, and I did an npm install, npm start, so this is running, and that is exactly what I have running in this other browser window. This is my HR dashboard. There's the home page, team page, events, and this is the grid. Of course, in my demo or my previous version, I didn't add the chart. That was a little ad hoc off script, but you can see that this is exactly pixel perfect to what I had inside of App Builder. Now, the question always comes up, what if I change something? Great. Let's go ahead and delete this chart and delete this guy and add a new page. So I'm going to add a child view. We'll call it blah, blah, blah. And let's go. We'll do a layout, Control E. We'll do a chart here, Control E. We'll do a grid here. Now, publish to GitHub. Well, it already knows I have a repo, so it's like, oh, let's create a pull request. And let's go ahead and do that. Do webinar, publish. It's creating the pull request. It's updating GitHub. Now it's going to prompt me as soon as this is complete. There's my updates. Let's go ahead and click this. Here I am. There's my updates. I can go ahead and look at this specific pull request. I can merge it, confirm the merge, and boom, I'm done. Delete the branch. Now that's updated. And if I was actually running the live one, this would auto sync up. But that's basically the round robin of what you get with App Builder. A couple other features I didn't highlight really. We've got the variables, which George is going to talk about, but also theming and branding. So you can see here, I'm just selecting different themes, custom themes I invented, and the whole application changes. So theming and branding is a big part of this. And then, of course, you may have your own digital assets that you need to use inside of your application. So you can upload those as well. So that's going to end my part of the demo to give you that high-level overview of App Builder. Now I'm going to let George share his screen and get into some of the master detail and the data binding work. So George, take it away.
Perfect. I'm just sharing my screen. Participants can now see my screen. So as Jason was mentioning, the whole purpose of this low-code tool is to help you do more things which we typically hand code directly inside of App Builder. And the real kicker for App Builder is everything you do inside of App Builder, as Jason showed, you're able to generate the code. So you're not actually limited by any feature set which we may have not implemented in App Builder yet. You're not limited by it. You have the full API for all the components which we generate, and you can extend the app freely as you feel fit. So inside of App Builder, one of the things which we are trying to show today is the ability to use data in meaningful ways, right? So the main value add here is, even though Jason was showing those list components and a chart component, what I'm going to show you today is how you can actually wire this up such that when you are actually clicking between these items in the list, the panel on the right is actually updating directly. Let me show you another example here, which is what I'm going to build directly today. Is here I have a selection detail kind of a setup where I have a list of customers being populated here. As I click through my list of customers, I'm able to see details of that customers. I'm also pulling in all the orders for this particular customer. And this is where our the ability of variables kick in to be able to make API calls in order to get just the orders for that particular customer. And then furthermore, I can click on any one particular customer order to see the order details area kind of light up. So this is one part of the selection detail. The other example I'm going to show you is routing or navigating using the use of parameters. And that's where we call this routing with parameters. Here you're seeing a grid. Jason already showed you how you can kind of template the grid or the cell inside the grid. And that's what I've done here to show a hyperlink. And what I have done is that anytime somebody clicks on these customer information here, it navigates to another page which shows the same detail I was showing you on selection detail. The only difference is that it's now split into two separate views, and I'm actually passing data from one view to another view. So with that, let me just show you what that selection detail scenario looks like when I'm starting with it. So I'm going to go into the editor of App Builder, and I have this one view set up called selection detail demo. And the whole purpose of this view is to show you what it would look like vanilla, right? So all I have done is follow the steps Jason showed to lay out this particular screen. The same thing, I have a list, I've bound it to some dummy data, it's being repeated, and then I have some panel sections here, but they are all pretty much flat text, right? All I'm saying is here is the heading, here is another heading, There's a customer orders grid, which is bound to some dummy data. I have an order details grid, which is bound to some dummy data. But we actually support Open API, as Jason mentioned, and that's the kind of API I'm going to use in order to make this selection detail scenario light up. And for me, I have added it into my data sources here. I have this API called Northwind API IGE. And if I say configure endpoints, you can see that we provide you almost a Swagger-like UI directly inside of App Builder, allowing you to basically get information directly from the API spec. We read it, we present it to you, allowing you to see what the authorization is, what the headers are, and then you can even test. So here I have provided a dummy, not a dummy, an actual ID for that particular customer. If I send this request, you can see that it actually gets me data for just that particular customer, right? All the information for that customer. Similarly, I have another data point, API point here with saying, show me all the orders for a specific customer ID. I have pumped in the same ID here. If I hit send, you can see, well, it's providing me all the order information for that particular customer. So once I have these kind of endpoints actually set up and I have tested it, I've authorized it, I am ready to use this inside the application for the scenario I wanted to show you. So let's do that first, right? So here I have that list and it's bound to this dummy data, which we call our sample source, which is bound to customers. But I want to bind it to this new API, which I just showed you right now. And for that, I'm just going to switch over to this Northwind API. And I'm saying, give me all the customers. And then we can, of course, bind based on that context here. So I can say data context for customers, show me customer ID. And for the subtitle, show me the customer or the company name. Now I have this list set up. It looks real. So if I switch over to my preview, everything looks like the same. The only difference is that this is now getting real data from my endpoint. Now, for this particular grid, I actually want to show all the orders for the selected customer. And this is where variables would actually kick in, right? So for that, what I can do is I can set up variables on the fly, or I can look in my toolbox here and I can set up variables. Well, I already have some variables set up, so I'm going to remove this for now. Just delete it from this data context so I can do it from scratch. Let's delete this one too. Yep, delete, delete. So that you really know I'm doing it from scratch. So I can set up new local variables or global variables directly from here, or I can do it on the fly, which is something which you can choose to do. So here what I'm doing is I'm going to remove this interactions on this particular list item. But now for the first time ever, I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to add an on-click interaction. And what I really want to do is stay on this page. I don't want to do anything, but I want to set a variable. So anytime somebody selects that customer, I want to actually set a variable information for this. And here saying, okay, set the variable, but now I have nothing, no variables defined. So I can create a new variable on the fly. And at this point, it already knows that this is a local variable. It defaults to that, but I can shift to a global variable. But I'm going to store the entire customer object. And for that, we have made it really handy. You don't have to type in anything. I just go to my data source, find that particular endpoint for my customers, get customers, and then say, I want to store an object based on that. So I will say selected customer. And I say create. And now it's going to set that particular variable. Now it needs a value, right? So for that, I'm going to say get the value from the data context here. So I'll say come here. And I can drill in and find an individual item. But since I want to store the whole information, I can select the entire object, saying data context from the object. So now I have setting a variable for selected customer, and I'm setting the value from the data context for that particular customer. Now that I have set this up, I have the selected customer, which I can use to now bind to something, right? So in here, I can say heading, the content was the default text. I can say get the contact information from customer ID, and I can get my heading information from the selected customer company name. And I'm not going to do the other address fields for now. But immediately you can see that it looks like just binding, right? If I want to show some realistic data, we also make it easy for you to go in here and say initialize this particular object based on an API request. And I can do that. I can say select API, go to my Northwind ID, and say give me the information from a specific customer. And it's asking me for a parameter, and I can type in something fake. I say done, and I say save. And at that point, it would make a request for that customer. Oops. Oh, interesting. Let me just check one thing. Go back in here. I had run into this issue. View details. Yep, I got alf key, the entire customer. Hit done. Save, and it actually showed up here. So now I have this information and it's partially built out, right? So anytime I select my customer here, this part of the information, this details part, is now being prepared based on my mouse click here, right? Now for the grid, I'm again going to actually connect it to a real API, which asks for something more specific than just give me a list of customers. So I go back to my API and I say, give me all the orders for this particular customer, which is this one. And you can see that it has the very same UI, allowing me to say, give me some information for my customer ID. And here I can say, get this information from the selected customer ID. And here I'm passing that variable in here. So now you can see that it's automatically updated the grid. It's finding all the information for that particular customer ID. Everything I'm doing here is typically what you would have written some code for, set up this whole process, but now we're making it really easy to drag and drop these kind of variables. And I'm going to do another interaction. And this time I'm setting it up specifically because on the list, it was just a click event. But for components like the grid, we actually expose more realistic events. For example, selection changed and also CRUD kind of actions. So in this case, I'm going to do the same thing. I say add an interaction, row selection changed. And here, I'm going to say, give me a variable for the, anytime I select that particular customer grid, I want to store the value of the order ID, right? So I can say, open this up again. Again, I have only one variable defined here. I can say new variable. I can do it on the fly, create a simple type. This is a number. And I say order ID. Well, let's call it selected order ID. I say create. And again, it's a mismatch, but that's not a problem. I guess I showed you last time, I can drill in. I can say set the order ID. Now, anytime somebody selects a row inside this particular grid, it's going to set the variable selected order ID. And for my order details grid, that's the beauty of it, I can now bind it to an actual endpoint again, which returns all the orders for details for the selected order ID. So I select that particular endpoint, and it's asking for a parameter, of course, and this time I'm going to select the selected order ID. Hit done. I run this app, and now everything should update dynamically. And when I select any particular row, you can see that the order details is actually lighting up. Another small thing we have done, which could be very helpful, is as I'm selecting or changing my customer, you can say that the order details table is kind of stuck. It's stuck on the previous selection. And for that, we have also added this ability to create a link between variables, right? So I can say, if I edit my selected order ID, I can say reset to a default value whenever a linked variable is changed. So if I enable that, I can now select what variable it depends on. I'll say selected customer. I hit save. And I'm doing this gradually, step by step, so you know what the moving parts are. So I click on this grid. everything is updating. And if I select a particular customer order, the order details is updated. But if I change my customer, you can see that that variable is cleared out. And now you have the fresh, clean slate to actually select something else. So what I just showed you is how you can create variables pretty much on the fly, how you can use those variables as part of the making an API request, which is what I showed you here. And then I showed you how you can bind those variables into the values here, and how you can use selection events or click events to actually hydrate and update the values of these variables. So this was an example of selection detail where everything is happening on the same page. But I also wanted to finish this passing data story by talking about routing in that sense. So for that, I'm going to switch back to another page here called routing demo. Here, it's again bound to a grid, which is bound to some boring sample data, but I'm going to connect it to some real data source. So I'm going to select it from customers. Now I have a table of customers, and what I'm going to use is the templating capabilities which Jason showed you. Is I'm going to select this particular column here and say enable cell display template. And you can see that clears out my column here. And here I can say, give me an hyperlink. And the approach I just used is a Control E or a Command E shortcut, which gives me a quick add kind of capability, which is the same as going to my toolbox and dragging and dropping a component, right? So this is just something I'm used to. I say link. And for this particular link, I can bind its value from the data context here and say customer ID. And now I have an actual link, which is showing all my customer information. And if I switch over to my toolbox, what I'm going to do is I want to actually store this click event into a parameter for a page. And that page would be this routing details demo, which is again the same problem. It's a vanilla page, which I just set up with the default elements. But I can create this. I have created this route ID as one of those route params, and then I've given it an initial value. So the benefit of this is when I go back to my routing demo page, whenever somebody clicks on this interaction here, on click, navigate to, and if I select that particular view I was doing, route details demo, it'll automatically show that, okay, it's expecting router ID, customer ID, and where do you want to get this information from? I can move in here, customer, I say customer ID. And at this point, if I click on this event, it's going to move into this page. It's navigating, but nothing is being hydrated, which is because that page was still pretty much plain Jane. I can now come in here and say heading should get this information from the router ID. So for that, let me do one more thing. Let's set up a new variable here called selected customer. And the selected customer is going to get this information. Let me just unbind it and rebind it from router ID. Hit done, save. And now I should be able to bind this to the selected customer information for customer ID, heading from, let's say, selected customer, company name. And I'm not going to go too much in here. So I'm going to come in back here, go to all customers. I click on Bergs, and you can see that now I'm routed to this particular page. But since I only wired up certain things, it's automatically hydrating based on what I just selected. And everything else works because I just copied over some of the assets. So everything was already bound to this variable called selected customer. And the selected customer itself was actually pulling its information from the router ID. So which is why when I just made one change, everything else started working automatically. So with this, you're able to see these two aspects of our app builder where we pass data, where you can set up these variables. You can change the value of those variables based on interactions. I showed you how you can do the selection detail on the same page. I showed you how you can do routing from one page to another. And I want to end with this latest and greatest from Angular, where we are also allowing you to now choose between standalone components versus Angular modules, which is a new thing which we are working on. And for that, I'm just going to switch to another environment here. And I just want to show you the difference, which you must be all very familiar with this more than me, is that this is an example of the app code which is being generated. Like, this is the HTML, which is fine. But if you look at the TypeScript, it's only showing us the import from Angular core. But if I switch over to standalone components and I show you the TypeScript, oops, let me just see it again. I'm showing you a dev environment right now, so give me a minute. Angular standalone preview. Well, looks like I'll have to check in because there was a different import which actually shows up.
George, Pablo, thank you, Pablo, for watching. He said that's the master view. Go to the
Oh, sorry.
Yes. We call him Pablo GPT. He knows every answer. So thank you, AI, for monitoring
That's right.
this webinar.
So thank you. So now you can see that it's actually showing me all the imports which I need in order to make this actually work. If I switch between Angular and Angular modules, the TypeScript, but still something is, I'm not seeing what I was expecting to see here. Maybe Pablo would have more ideas around this thing. But
Well,
anyway,
the good thing is,
here, yeah.
Yeah, that's showing modules now. But you can join us on Discord, and that's where Pablo and the rest of the team hang out. So as you are doing your development, you have questions, you run into issues, there's feature requests, whatever. We have multiple avenues for support, but we have a big Discord community, which is a lot of fun because there's a lot of people on there, and you can get help and support there. And since this is in dev, yeah, this is going to be released, I think, by the end of this week, George?
That's right. That's correct.
Week? Okay,
yeah,
cool.
Early next week or end of this week.
Sweet.
Yeah, that's all I had to share about what you can do, the power of App Builder to kind of generate code and be able to take away some of the routine and the mundane tasks which you typically do as developers, but do it faster and in a much more error-free way, and be able to share with stakeholders much earlier than done before. So, Jason, I'm going to stop my share for now.
Cool. And I have one more slide to show. Let me share the screen, and then we will wrap it up because we are racing to run out of time here. We had a lot of amazing questions, George, in the chat, spirited questions, comments, and you know, people are excited, but they also want to see like this idea of VB6, you know, which we talk about a lot, which I mentioned, you know, we're going to get there eventually. But right now there's a lot of brick and mortar stuff to get done. And this release, hopefully, if you joined us last year, hopefully you see like, oh my gosh, look at all this cool new stuff. That's the great thing. We're releasing monthly or quicker. Our cadence is fast. You know, we're banging out features, big features every month, small features every 2 weeks. So you have to jump on the app builder train and hang on, because it's going to make your life easy. You're going to have a lot of fun doing it, and you're going to look really good to your boss and to your stakeholders, because the stuff that you can build out with App Builder is pretty amazing. So get started today at appbuilder.dev. Go to YouTube. We have a huge array of webinars, how-to videos up on YouTube that you can learn from. I mentioned Discord. Jump on the Discord channel. You can go to our website and find out that information. But I want to thank everyone. I want to thank Gene and Q for inviting us over today to talk to all of you. This was great. And I loved all of the interaction. If after the webinar you have any questions, Jason B at infragistics.com, gabraham at infragistics.com are our emails. And we are here to help you be successful with App Builder and driving those next products that you need to share. So Q, I'll pass it back to you.
All right, guys. Thank you so much for your time. I don't know if there's any other last minute questions. Feel free to ask them now, but we are at 12:55 or 11 or 1, wherever you're at. Yeah, it was awesome. It was good to see all of this stuff. And yes, this is recorded, Rick. It will be up on the NG Webinars channel on YouTube. I'm not sure when Gene will get that up, but it's usually pretty quick. All right. And if with that, she said probably 3 weeks. And with that, guys, thank you again. It was awesome seeing it. I will be joining that Discord server today. Y'all have a good rest of your day.